Hello everyone! Today it is my kind of pleasure to be talking about Two Women by Alberto Moravia. Let's get right into it right away. What is the problem? If you pick up this book and you read the back, all right? A very normal thing to do when you pick up an unusual book. You pick it up and you want to get a sense of what is the story. Two Women tells the effect of war on the lives of ordinary people. Wonderful. But if you keep reading this description, it will tell you that a certain traumatic event will certainly occur in the book. Not only here on this old Penguin edition, but if you go to Goodreads, it also says the same thing, that this is the story of X, Y, and Z and this traumatic event. And if you're reading a book about a mother and her very beautiful daughter who are trying to survive the end of the Second World War. They live in Rome, they run out of food, and basically they don't want to starve, and this woman is from the countryside, so she thinks that they'll run off to the countryside and go to join her family and the peasants who live in the mountains. And if you know that there is a traumatic event which will occur, it makes it very hard to enjoy the novel, because the whole time I was reading it, I kept thinking, when is it going to happen? Will it happen now, in this chapter? This new character who has been introduced, is he the one who's going to cause the traumatic event to occur? You understand, like, how I'm dancing around and I'm not telling you exactly what is the traumatic event. Maybe you can guess. Maybe you think, oh, I know what the traumatic event is he's alluding to. But you're not 100% sure. You don't know. Maybe I'm referring to some other traumatic event that you haven't even thought of yet. You might be mistaken. And if there is a shadow of a doubt in your mind while you're reading the book, you can read with some curiosity. Oh, I didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be this other thing. I had no idea that he was actually alluding to that kind of a traumatic event. You can have that curiosity, but not if you read the back, because now there's no shadow of a doubt and there's no curiosity. It's just, when is it going to happen? I'm nearly 100% sure which of the characters it's going to happen to. Like, that's hardly a thing to be curious about. So if you're planning to read this book, try not to read any dust jacket. Try not to read the description on Goodreads. If I can motivate you to read this book based on this video, I promise I'm not going to give away what happens. You could probably imagine, but again, like, you're just imagining. You're not 100% sure, which will help you in reading the novel. When, what is this thing that's going to happen? Something's going to happen, of course. So it was very, very hard for me to enjoy this book a lot. But if I hadn't have known those things, it would have been a much better novel for me to enjoy. We have this woman who's quite simple. She's from the countryside. She was married to this man. The marriage was quite unhappy. He was very unfaithful to her, but she was a good Italian housewife. They had a daughter. He ran around with other women, but what can you do? She didn't find him very appealing, and she didn't care too much that he ran around with other women. He died, and she was left this apartment which was above the shop that they owned. And she was extremely successful as a shopkeeper. She made a lot of money, especially at the end of the war, when food was getting really scarce and all the shopkeepers could just charge super inflated prices. And that actually was a bit of her downfall, is that she was so greedy for money that she ended up selling all of the food that they had. And one day there was no more food. Not just food for her to sell as a shopkeeper, but food to keep her and her daughter alive. She realized, oh God, I've sold everything and I don't have anything for us to eat. What are we going to do? And she gets the idea that let's go off to the mountains to live with the peasants, and my family's up there, and the peasants, they always have food. They have pigs and goats and corn. The peasants never run out of food. They always have plenty. They leave Rome. There are so many fantastic scenes. Like, there's this scene where they manage to get these tickets to get on a train, which is leaving Rome to go off to the countryside. Half of the train is occupied by Nazi soldiers, or German soldiers. I don't know the soldiers' political affiliations. And the other half of the train is filled with just Italians trying to get the hell out of Rome. And there's standing room only. They kind of make a little room for themselves by one of the doors, and they sort of, oh, this is our space now. And this woman has quite a lot of money. She's sewn it into a secret pocket inside her skirt, so she has all of this money because, well, that's all she has. And they go out to the countryside and discover that the town, the village that they thought they were going to stay in, this village has been evacuated. Like all of the homes and the shops, all the doors and windows have been boarded up. There's nobody there. And so they have to start walking and asking farmers, can we stay with you for a night? The hardships that they have to put up with because the food is whatever they can scrounge. The sleeping accommodation is awful. Bed bugs, the filth, the snoring, at one point in the book, oh, it's horrifying. She's wondering what that stink is. Like, you know, it's not a stink of unwashed bed linen, and it's not a stink of filthy bodies, and it's not a stink of rotten food. What is this stink? She discovers some bedpans which have never been washed. Bedpans which have been emptied but not cleaned. And these bedpans are encrusted with filth and just swarming with flies. Like it makes me sick to think about it, but it was also kind of a funny scene. Like it was just one disgusting hardship after another. They stay with this one farmer's family for a while. They have to escape from that family and they go up the mountain into another village higher up the slope. And they spend, I think, 9 months they spend up there with that village. And of course, you know, people are kind. They're kind to her as long as she has money. Where they end up staying is like a converted pigsty or like a house where the goats used to live. They're sleeping on just these boards with a sheet on top of these bare wooden boards. They're being charged ridiculous rent to sleep there. Abominable hardships that they have to bear. And so they have some meat and they have some bread. But one of the things they don't have is salt. And there are still these black market traders roaming the countryside, making huge profits selling salt and tobacco. And a few other things, you know, flour. Flour is a big thing. Cheese was another one. Like, oh, you know, he had this cheese and he was charging so much money, but I hadn't seen a cheese like that for such a long time that I had to buy that cheese. Like you would never think in this world today that you would ever be in a position where there was no salt. You've got a goat and you cook it, but there's no salt. You just have to cook it without anything, with some herbs. And you know, there's a line in the book where she talks about how disgusting it is to eat meat that is unsalted. It's sickening to eat it when there's no salt. So a lot of this book is about the hardships they have to endure. And this is quite an ugly passage, but I'll read it to you anyway because that's what the whole book's about. They've left Rome. They've gone to live with the peasants. They're trying to survive until like the war goes away. Like we could just go back to being normal Italians again, go back to Rome and try to pick up our previous lives. But nobody knows when the war is going to end. The Germans are still fighting. Let me read you this to give you a taste of Alberto Moravia's style. So now they're living in the hut where the goats used to live. So what has happened now is that they have been living there for a while, but all of a sudden the rains have come, you know, like a month-long rainy season. Going out was not to be thought of. We left the hut only when absolutely necessary, as, for instance, to gather wood or to go a distance in order to satisfy the needs of nature. And at this point, although the subject is not a very pleasant one, I must state that anyone who has not led that sort of life and who lives in a town where each house has its own lavatory and even perhaps its own bathroom cannot possibly know what it is to live in a place where no kind of latrine exists. Both of us, 2 or 3 times a day at least, had to go out along the terrace and there, lifting up our skirts, squat down behind a hedge just like animals. Toilet paper, there was none, naturally. Nor even newspapers or such like. And so we acquired the habit of tearing leaves off a fig tree that stood just outside near the hut and cleaning ourselves with them. With the coming of the rain, all of this, of course, became much more difficult and disagreeable. To go out through fields, plunging up to the ankles in mud, and then, in pouring rain, to pull up one's skirt and feel the rain beating cold and repellent on one's bare bottom, and then to rub oneself with a wet, clammy fig leaf. These are things that I would not wish for anyone, even my worst enemy. I must add that the rain brought discomfort not only out of doors, but indoors as well. Inside the hut, since there was no floor, the mud was such that in the morning, when we got out of bed, we had to hop here and there, like frogs, on large stones placed especially for the purpose. Otherwise, one was likely to put one's feet in the mud and to pull them out the color of chocolate. The rain, in short, penetrated everywhere with a wetness not to be described, and whatever we did, even if we made the smallest movement, we at once discovered that we were splashed with mud, that we had mud on our skirts, or our legs, or somewhere. Mud on the ground and rain in the sky. Alberto Moravia is a beautiful, incredible writer. The Italians are really some underrated writers. Maybe people don't like to read books in translation, but we have Alberto Moravia, we have Primo Levi, we have Italo Calvino. I'm probably forgetting some important names, but very essential, amazing, creative 20th century Italian writers. And Alberto Moravia is one of them. And this book is somewhat based on his own experience, that he was living in Rome. He had to go flee out into the mountains. Listen to this. This is fantastic. Alberto Moravia was born in Rome in 1907, the son of an architect. Between the ages of 9 and 20, he suffered from continual ill health. He learned French, German, and English as a child, and in 1925, at the time of writing his first novel, was foreign correspondent in London, Paris, and elsewhere for La Stampa and La Gazzetta del Popolo in Turin. In the latter years of fascism, his books were banned and he had to write articles under a pseudonym. During the German occupation of Italy, he went into hiding in the mountains until the liberation in May 1944. He lives in Rome and on the island of Capri and is regarded as among the foremost of Italian writers. I'm a really big fan of Alberto Moravia. Whenever I see his books, I buy them, regardless of the cost. Like a lot of European writers, he has a way of getting deep into the psychology of his characters quite easily. With a few well-crafted sentences, he brings out their character quite magically. I've always loved that about European authors, about how they can, like Milan Kundera especially, how they can really not just describe a character physically, but emotionally give the reader the reason for their behavior, which is what I love. This book it's a first-person point of view of the mother who's looking after her innocent daughter. A bit simple-minded, and she's really a peasant from the countryside who just happened to go to Rome to get married, but also very, very passionate and very opinionated and very strong-willed, which is how she manages to keep her and her daughter alive for such a long time, because this woman is, she's quite a hurricane of emotions, and she's not one of those people who will just casually sit on the side of the road and starve to death because she's afraid to raise her voice. She'll raise her voice anytime to get what she needs. This is a fantastic character. Maybe we don't always like her so much because sometimes she's a little bit too simple for her own good, but she's so carefully drawn. Honestly, it felt like I was reading about a real person. Like, her character was so, the fidelity. She starts here, she finishes here, and there's no lapse in the development of this character. You know this woman would be like this. If this were a real live person, they would say those things, they would behave in that way, and it's because of Moravia's talent for bringing the character to life. I did enjoy this book. It was just that it was kind of ruined for me because of the information I knew about the story. This one critical thing that happens in the plot, critical, most critical, the thing which the whole book hinges on. Why do you have to put that on the back of the book to tell the readers that? If you're reading a scene like that and it begins to happen, you might wonder, you might say, well, maybe there will be a deus ex machina that comes down and solves this problem before it actually takes place. We hold on to the hope that maybe it won't happen. Maybe they will be able to escape. Maybe some unexpected twist will occur that we don't see that thing happen. But when we know it, we read the book with a sense of finality that like, well, yeah, it's going to happen. Well, it didn't happen in this chapter. Maybe it will happen in the next chapter. The only little complaint that I have is that after this critical thing happens, one of the characters undergoes like a massive change in personality. It was odd because the book is very much realism. Like, this is Italy. These are Italian people. It is, the Second World War. They are in Rome. They go to the countryside. This is realism. But the transformation that this character undergoes for the last 50 pages or 100 pages of the novel, 50 pages, I think, it was too sudden, too dramatic, and too extreme of a personality change. And I was wondering, like, should we be reading this character metamorphosis as an allegory? Should we read it symbolically? Because I don't want to read it symbolically, because we've been reading the whole novel as like gritty European realism, and suddenly now we have to get all symbolic because the character seems to be behaving in this really, really peculiar way. I wasn't terribly happy with the way this character transformed. I can understand it on a symbolic level, but it's not a symbolic book. It's hard realism. You can't just switch to symbolism because suddenly you think you want this character to do this massive shift in their personality. It doesn't work like that. So that was a bit hard to tolerate. I did enjoy it. I would recommend it, perhaps not the first Moravia. Give some of Alberto Moravia's other books a chance. Boredom, if you can get a copy of that, there's a book to read. Wow, this is really good. Then maybe you want to read Two Women, because there's the next place. But just to start there, I think it's just too heavy of a starting place. And I guess I like this one more than I like that one. And even the book that I read last year, 1934, I thought that book was quite good. It's very good though. It's so hard to enjoy the book when it's already been spoiled for you by these people who just, don't you have any sense? Why would you put that on the back? There you go. That's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe. Alberto Moravia. What a neglected author. I wonder if he's really, really amazingly popular in Italy. I hope so. I hope he is. Thanks for watching. Take care. Chicken's ready. Turn off the chicken. Turn it off. Turn off the chicken, Grant. I'm going to, Grant. I'm going to turn off the chicken. Did you put on smoked Hungarian paprika? Of course I did. Of course I did. Toilet paper, there was none.